Exosomes. Good morning, Ergo-Flex family. I want to talk to you about exosomes. This is a very interesting, it's newer concept as to what's coming out in regenerative medicine. So we all know about the allographic stem cell injection and the big controversy as to whether or not stem cells are live or dead or they're actually doing anything and so on and so forth. And that's also where the FDA compliance document came out as far as minimally manipulated and homologous use. Well, what's interesting about exosomes is that it basically is a way to sidestep that whole scenario, because these products, at least is what the doctor that I talked to, the PhD, Timothy, at Direct Biologics, he's saying that there's no cellular material in this product. So in other words, there's no DNA that we can have an adverse effect. All right, so that kind of negates the need for it being a homologous use. So, you know, a secretion can be used for anything because there's no cellular material in there. Fat can be used. You know, bone tissue can be used. Now, exosomes, at least from the two companies that I talked to over the weekend in Vegas, they're getting their mesenchymal stem cells from bone marrow aspirates, okay? And the PhD, he did a great job of explaining it. He said that basically when you take these mesenchymal stem cells and you put them on a growth medium and then replicate them, they basically, as they replicate, use their predisposition to be bone marrow material, okay? So that means that as they replicate, they go back to an undifferentiated mesenchymal stem cell, which is interesting because now we don't have a problem with, you know, non-homologous. That's at least the theory. Now, the next thing is that exosomes are an excretion of the mesenchymal stem cell, and they have paracrine signaling factors. So endokines, cytokines, all of the messenger RNA, microRNA, all of these different structures that are being put off by the endosome and also the exosome, but specific to the exosome. So they want to capture the exosome, and they do that because the exosome is a very, very small particulate. So it's 1 to 2 nanometers, which means that it can be micron filtered. So they grow the mesenchymal stem cell in this in a 3-dimensional matrix. So it's not just on a plate; it's actually in. God, how did he explain it? It's like they're spherical, 3-dimensional, kind of like a jelly. All right, and that's how they're growing the mesenchymal stem cells on these bubbles of material in this medium. Which is interesting. So then what happens is that they take this entire soup of MSC and all of the particles that it creates, including the exosomes, and they filter it. They micron filter it. And since the exosome is so small, nanometers, it can be filtered through. The other larger molecules are not small enough to pass through the filter. So now we have a very pure substance of exosomes and the paracrine factors that go along with it. Then they process that, they basically capture that material. And since it has no cellular material, it's got no DNA. So then there's actually the ability to put that in place. Either, now they've got a couple, it's pretty interesting. They've got, of course, a liquid injectable, but they also have a way to make it into powder form. So storage becomes much less of an issue in the powder form, which is very interesting because, you know, the argument is are the stem cells really doing all the work, or is it the regenerative soup of signaling, the actual whole cellular structure as to why it's happening? Okay, and why that regenerative effect is actually occurring. Is it the stem cell doing the work, or is it the signaling factors that the stem cells make? That's one of the big questions that's going out there. Personally, From my clinical experience, I think it has more to do with the signaling, but time will tell. So the paracrine factors and the signaling factors, endokines, cytokines, all of that good stuff is what the exosomes are really looking at. And because it's got no cellular material in it, now we don't have to worry about having adverse reactions and homologous use and minimally manipulated. That's at least what the scientist was telling me. And it makes sense. So check it out, exosomes. It really looks like the next evolution in what we can do with regenerative medicine. If you have any other questions, post on Chiropractic Instruments of Success or Ergo-Flex Facebook pages. You can always reach me at dr.wyatt@backontrack.com. I look forward to your questions.